Hi folks, I'm Joanne Balsamo and I'll be presenting Blended Learning in Higher Education, Institutional Adoption and Implementation. Relatively little of the current research on blended learning addresses institutional adoption issues. The authors of Blended Learning in Higher Education, Institutional Adoption and Implementation propose a framework for institutional blended learning adoption identifying three stages. 1. Awareness and exploration. 2. Adoption and early implementation. 3. Mature implementation and growth. This study applies this adoption framework to 11 U.S. institutions participating in a Next Generation Learning Challenge grant and attempting to transition from an awareness exploration of blended learning to the adoption and early implementation phase. In 2002, the editor of the Journal of Asynchronous Learning Networks predicted that approximately 80 to 90% of higher education courses would become blended in the future. By 2004, scholars reported that 45.9% of U.S. undergraduate institutions already offered blended courses. In 2011, scholars noted the explosive growth of blended learning and acknowledged blended learning's potential to become the new normal in higher education. While a number of scholars have conducted course-level investigations of blended learning's effectiveness, very few have provided guidance for blended learning adoption at the institutional level. Graham, Woodfield, and Harrison examined a sample of 6 U.S. institutions of higher education at various stages of blended learning adoption and proposed a framework to assist administrators to effectively implement blended learning. The framework identified 3 stages of blended learning adoption as well as key strategy, structure, and support issues universities may address at each stage. Stage 1 was awareness and exploration, which was defined as institutional awareness of and limited support for individual faculty exploring ways in which they may employ blended learning in their classes. Stage 2, adoption and early implementation, which was defined as institutional adoption of blended strategies and experimentation with new policies and practices to support its implementation. Stage 3, mature implementation and growth, which was defined as well-established blended learning strategies, structure, and support that are integral to university operations. The goals of these stages of the framework were to 1. Enhance pedagogy with included increasing learning effectiveness, satisfaction, and efficiency, increase access and flexibility, and improve cost effectiveness and resource use. The University of Florida confirmed the effects of increased pedagogical effects when they conducted a multi-year study examining the success of the tens of thousands of their face-to-face blended learning and online students. For the study, UCF defined success as earning at least a C grade, and the study considered college, gender, and modality. UCF reported that success rates for blended learning were higher within each college than either fully face-to-face or fully online for both males and females. Specifically, it was found that blended learning provided students with increased access to higher education offerings while providing institutions greater access to student populations. Blended learning also afforded teachers and students enhanced temporal and geographic flexibility, allowing them to determine when and where online segments of instruction would occur. It was also found that blended learning delivered models featured lower operating costs than face-to-face models. Overall, per-pupil expenditures to implement blended learning are significantly lower than the national average for traditional brick-and-mortar schools. In addition, blended learning facilities increase enrollment and enhance use of physical facilities by requiring less seat time than fully face-to-face courses, and enabling higher student retention than fully online courses, thus decreasing time for completion of degrees. The study also found that creating an institutional definition of blended learning can facilitate important objectives, such as distinguishing blended learning courses from other delivery methods for scheduling purposes, providing students with clear and reliable expectations regarding blended learning courses, and developing appropriate support strategies. Professional development was also found to be crucial because many faculty members needed to develop new technological and pedagogical skills to teach in a blended format. Faculty must have the technological skills necessary to design and maintain the online portions of each course. Pedagogical skills are necessary to fully investigate the wide variety of instructional methods unique to blended learning. For this study, the authors identified 20 institutions at the adoption and early implementation stages of blended learning and held a seminar to share blended learning design and delivery strategies, blended learning models, assessment and data collection protocols, and workshop and training materials. They also hosted 6 live webinars and provided various implementation recommendations through its online blended learning toolkit. Of the 20 institutions, 11 agreed to report the results of the blended learning implementation. The study had several key results. 9 universities reported improved pedagogy as a primary purpose for adopting blended learning. Also, 9 universities identified temporal and/or graphical access and flexibility as benefits of blended learning. 6 institutions appreciated increased access and flexibility for specific groups of students. 2 institutions improved student learning outcomes. 1 institution introduced new practices to the students and to ensure that we provide the best learning environment using the different learning modalities. Plus, multiple institutions also noted that they found blended learning more cost effective. Blended learning has experienced explosive growth in individual courses, but more research is needed in institutional adoption and implementation. The framework developed by the authors of this article provides institution-specific steps that help implement blended learning consistently across their entire course load. Research supports these efforts, as 11 colleges who agreed to report back with data experience some type of benefit from the blended learning environment. What does this type of research mean to individual institutions, designers, or educators? It means that blended learning is not a phase, a gimmick, or an anomaly. Neither are they just a transition between online and face-to-face formats. Blended courses provide real benefits and cost savings, improve student outcomes, and increase outcomes to the institutions that take a systematic approach to implementing them. And blended learning is becoming a major playing player in all of our courses. Thank you for listening to our presentation. Have a good evening.